Blessings, beloveds, ladies and gentlemen. Ladies, this is for you. So, I wanted to share some reflections on Lilith, the goddess Lilith. There are around about 4 or 5 different bodies or positions of Lilith relative to asteroids, the black moon, and so forth. I've spoken about the technical side of things before, so I'm not going to go into that. But I do just want to make some comments on the black moon Lilith, and specifically the true position, okay? Because most of the astrological software works with the mean position. Mean position just means the average position, okay? So when you take an average of something, it's an average. It's not specific, right? So when you take the true position of Lilith, it's the actual true position of the position she is in at any given moment. Part of the reason that the true position is not taken is because the fluctuation of the true position is very difficult to work with. And I guess many people find that challenging, which I understand. But, it's like the transiting nodes, right, of the moon. There's many transiting nodes because all the planets have nodes. But let's just take the moon's nodes, for example. The transiting moon's nodes can also be found in a mean position, meaning an average position, meaning not specific. So would you take, if you're looking at the nodes in your own birth chart, would you take the true position or would you take the mean position? If you take the mean position, I would have to say that would probably not be the wisest thing because it's an average. It's like when you're doing some kind of mathematical sort of evaluation or assessment of, say, your finances for the month of February, for example. Do you want an average kind of estimate, or would you prefer a clear-cut specific estimate? It's a bit like that. That's a pretty superficial example, but it kind of resonates with a lot of people because everyone kind of, I suppose relies on money to survive, right? Anyway, okay, so let's get back to the crunch of this particular offering. So I'm very keen on talking about Lilith, and I always have been. If you go back onto my YouTube channel and you go back like 2-3 years ago, you'll see where I've spoken about Lilith in the early days where I was using my mobile phone to record. And, as one begins a YouTube channel, eventually they learn, the different sort of ins and outs, and, we kind of evolve on every level, don't we? Even with the production of YouTube videos, etc. But the point being that I was speaking about Lilith in virtually, I think, the first, few months of when I started this YouTube channel because I've always felt, excuse the some people, criticize the but anyway, it just sometimes it just comes out. So Lilith, the asteroid goddess Lilith, or the black moon Lilith, whichever Lilith you want to use. Lilith is Lilith, period, right? There's, various points, but there's the again. But Lilith is Lilith at the end of the day. And, many of you are aware of her mythology, her history, what she corresponds to, the archetype that reflects her frequency. And she's loved by many and she's feared by many as well. I would say mostly feared than loved or understood for that matter. And a lot of that has got to do with ignorance, not understanding the archetype, not knowing the true resonance of who she is, her frequency, what she actually represents. And of course, she does bring up in both men and women, so regardless of gender, she's an archetype that corresponds to the wild feminine. So the wild feminine can be expressed through both a man or a woman. It doesn't matter what gender you are. But certainly, because we live in a patriarchal society and have for many thousands of years, the archetype of the wild feminine, has been shamed, criticized, scrutinized, rejected, judged, and so forth. That's just a fact. That's not even my personal opinion. Even though one of the reasons I'm so passionate about this subject and this archetype is because, I do have a very, very prominent Black Moon Lilith in my own chart. In fact, if we want to talk about the birth chart for a moment, she's exactly, literally to the degree on my midheaven, which for those of you that don't know is the top part of the chart, right? So it's the level of the chart that corresponds to how people see you, the professional, I suppose, expression of who you are. It speaks to, so for example, I have been involved in many different professions through my life. Astrology has been with me, since I was 12. And I started working professionally with astrology from around about the age of 25. And I have continued, from then until now, but I've taken sort of breaks from it from the point of view of working with clients because I explored other careers such as counseling, therapist, psychology. I was a flight attendant for a private, aviation company, airline in the Middle East. I've done quite a few different things. So in whichever professional field, certainly on that consensus reality level, when I've worked for an organization, an establishment, and so forth, Lilith gets triggered, right, in all my in all my experiences. So I really want to kind of reach out to, well, whether you're a man or a woman, because this may speak to you as a guy as well, but I dare say it's possibly more prominent in a woman's life from the point of view of how she experiences Lilith, from the level of how people receive her or perceive her. Whereas on a general level, and this is generally, when it comes to a man, the male gender, it's more typically experienced through the females, whether it be friends or personal partners that he attracts in his life, right? And the different relationships and experiences that he has around that. But for women, it seems to be a woman who's a strong Lilith woman is a strong Lilith woman. She's going to, you know, embody that archetype, and it will ooze out of her, and it won't be liked by the majority, and it certainly won't be accepted by the majority. So I'm speaking to this because I have experienced this my entire life. And so the Lilith archetype, it has such a strong sexual magnetic level to her, a level that can be quite threatening to the patriarchal masculine expression of life, because it is a woman who is fearless, a woman who stands in her own power, a woman who just doesn't take any shit, okay? If I'm going to put it very simply. So, because of the structure of the way the consensus reality is, a woman who is fearless, who's independent, who's strong, who's got a strong masculine side, who's expressive in all of that, who, uh, you know, fights for herself, fights for others, and so forth, is not necessarily a woman who is accepted so easily, because the model in the consensus reality relative to the feminine archetype since Libra came into the zodiac, which was quite some time ago. But ever since Libra came into the existence of the zodiac, it brought about this concept of marriage, partnership, and that in turn dictated the role of what a woman needs to be or should be. So, mother, wife, homemaker. And naturally, over many, many years now, we've seen the evolution and expansion of a woman's role, which has expanded in, multiple levels in professional ways. I mean, it's not very typical to see women in leadership roles. Well, it is now, but it really wasn't previously. So anyway, a lot of things have changed as time has gone on, but I think there is still a level, in our society, from the consensus perspective, when a woman is in her power, which is Lilith, who is totally free within herself, allows that wild feminine to show up and to be expressed, it's not easily accepted, or certainly not embraced. And I'm reaching out and I'm speaking about this because I'm one of those women. Okay, I have a Greek background. The expectations were that I would marry and have children and live that kind of life where I would take on the role of, a mother and a wife. And that was significant, that's a big deal to do that. And I'm not saying it's not, it's very sacred and it's very valuable, and it's very beautiful. It is all that. But for the women who have a strong Lilith in their chart, it's not only Lilith, it would be other things that would point to that, but certainly Lilith would be a large pointer, a very significant component in the individual's psyche, okay, that speaks to a person who is free, who needs to be free. And this, we can take this back to when you want to talk about natural law, Mother Earth, and the matriarchal level of experience and existence, which is natural law, that the matriarchal times, as far as I understand at least, really reflects natural law, Mother Earth, nature. So there was no, marriage didn't exist, for instance. Monogamy as we know it, things like that just didn't exist. back in the day. So as we've progressed forward, systems have come into play, and they are so imprinted into the psyche of individuals. And so what I've noticed is that because we live in this particular patriarchal existence and world, when you have people who have a really strong Lilith in their chart, and they, there's such a strong urge um, to be themselves, to be free, right? And they feel like they can't because of the family they were born into, the culture, the religion, the country, all those things can be so difficult to stand within your own power, within your own Lilith, right? So it's really challenging, and I really really feel, for a lot of people out there who have this experience, because as I said, I've been one of those people, and I still am. Until 3 years ago, I was employed by a mainstream organization who was owned by a USA company, and I was working as a mental health clinician. And the setting around that is very consensus reality. It was very controlled. There was all these levels of, hierarchy, mainly men in those roles. There was no room actually for the true sort of self to come through, the authentic self to come through. You had to become what they wanted you to be, which was like a fucking robot, basically, uh, having, one session after another, like 8 sessions a day with clients, and following some systematic procedure that ticked the boxes relative to what brought money in for them. And so anything outside of that was frowned upon. And even so, that's the professional, so-called professional side of it. But even just the level of being free in the work environment, to basically people were isolated and instructed to sit in a certain spot for the entire day, right? For 8 hours a day, 8 sessions, right? Client after client after client. Um, and so if you moved out of that space, which I frequently did, because I would get up and I would just do some yoga stretches. I would walk down the corridor, down the hallways, and I would be like stretching my arms, stretching my legs. And I found that very therapeutic and very healing, because sitting down in a chair for 8 hours a day is really severe in terms of bringing up pretty bad health issues down the track for yourself, right? And so because I'm a, fairly, I'm pretty passionate about yoga. I've been exercising pretty much my whole life. So to sit me in one spot for 8 hours is like putting me in a straitjacket, right? It's just enough to make me go insane. So naturally I would have to get up and move and so forth. And it wasn't just myself, there was a couple of other individuals there that were on the same page as me, and they would do the same. But when we did that in that kind of context, in that environment, you were looked upon as a person who was not following the rules, who wasn't apparently being respectful to management, to your role, and all this absolute fucking garbage bullshit, right? So when you have a strong, getting back to the original point, when you have a strong Lilith in your chart, those kind of environments and that those conditions, they're they're not going to be good for you, obviously. And sometimes we need to do what we need to do. Sure, I understand that. I've done that myself. But if you find yourself in a position where you feel excluded, where you feel you're not understood, where you don't feel appreciated, and you don't feel validated for the Lilith within you, that can be very painful. It can be a very painful experience to go through, especially when you're working in a consensus reality profession. Because, I mean, it's when you're working in that situation, you want to get along with your peers, with your managers, you want to kind of fulfill your role and so forth. And so that edge of Lilith, as soon as she comes in, it's just not going to be accepted. So it always comes back to, you either have to kind of conform really to what's expected of you, and there will always be this incredible sort of anxiety and also conflict within your own self when you're in that position, because you know that you're not being true to who you are, right? And you're just kind of conforming to the circumstances in order to fit the mold of what's expected of you, right? And for a woman, or even a man for that matter, who's got a strong Lilith within them, that's going to be a huge struggle. And that has been my experience in my own personal life. So I guess what I'm trying to say in a nutshell is, if you feel that, you need to recognize what's going on. You need to recognize who you are and that power within you, and not allow the external environment in the consensus reality, because that's where it's going to come from, to shame you or make you feel bad about yourself, or make you feel that you don't fit in and therefore there's something wrong with you, because there's nothing wrong with you at all, whether you're a man or a woman for that matter, in the context of what I'm discussing. So it's about having the courage to recognize what's going on, pick yourself up, and make a decision about where you want to be and how you want to live. And so it's not always easy to build a career for yourself and just work for yourself. I understand that. It's taken me a long time to get to that point within my own life and create that for myself. It didn't happen overnight. I've worked at that in many different ways, and we all have to, in our own way. But again, we have to make a decision. Do I want to live in that part of reality, consensus reality? If I'm this Lilith kind of archetype, as it were, if I embody that energy so strongly, and it describes such a big component of who I am and who I'm becoming and who I want to be and how I want to live my life. Do I suppress that and deny it and block it in order to meet the consensus reality level of being accepted? Or do I face that path of uncertainty where it's lonelier, you're more kind of isolated in a way, because you're no longer connected to the sheep, to the consensus reality. So you've gone off on your own. And that's exactly what Lilith did. When she was, because she was the first wife of Adam, as in Adam and Eve from biblical times, right? So before Eve came along, it was Lilith that was there. And she basically did not want to succumb to Adam's demands, from the level of he wanted to be in charge of everything. And so her response was, well, no, I want us to kind of be equal, right? To be on the same page. And he wasn't having that. So she basically took off and left him. And when she took off, there's more to this story, but in short, she took off and she went into the wild, right? Literally into the wild, off mainland, into these caves and into nature. And so hence the Lilith archetype is this wild individual who lives off the mainland, out of the consensus reality, and who will be scrutinized and who will be judged and who will be shamed for their ability to be so free. And this is what happens to people who have a strong Lilith in their chart. And so when you're not aware of this and you don't understand what's going on, and you're trying to get this validation and acceptance from the consensus reality and it's not happening, so then it kind of, for many people, it becomes this process and journey where they start to feel bad about themselves because everybody else is sort of judging them and shaming them for being free, right, and authentic. And so it turns into this situation where you believe, for instance, the judgments that are being made about you, as it were, and you fall into that trap, right? And so you end up feeling really at a real loss because you're not happy in the evaluation that others have made of you. And so you ignore that real part of you, the wild Lilith, right? And you want to sort of be accepted in the consensus reality. So you deny that side of you that is more authentic. And so you deny it and you want to kind of fit into that mold and that model and that environment and that context, and you want that validation and so forth. And so you put yourself in that position and basically you end up being miserable. So the other thing that can happen is that you're in a situation where you're working professionally in the consensus reality for a professional company. It could be some really, elite, really advanced, higher sort of level of profession, for instance, or it could be, in the middle or somewhere else. Wherever it's going to be, it's not going to make you happy because you're denying something about your own self, which is more authentic. So you have to, in my opinion, and in my experience and in my observations, you have to step into that zone where you have to realize and accept that when you allow that wild, free Lilith to have a voice, most people won't like it. And you have to be okay with that. You have to come to some kind of understanding about that and be okay with it. Because if you're not, then you'll never get there. You'll always just revert back to trying to be what everybody else expects of you and what everybody else wants you to be. And in your heart of hearts, you won't be happy. And so you may find yourself in a situation where the universe literally makes your circumstances so impossible to deal with that you've got no choice but to leave, to resign, or maybe you get fired or retrenched, right, from that kind of context and situation, which then forces you back into Lilith, into the more authentic version of who you are. And it's challenging because taking that path and taking those risks is so uncertain, and it being uncertain, it doesn't have that level of security. It doesn't have that security of the income coming in weekly or monthly or whatever it is you receive. And most people will not take that path. But yeah. So I just wanted to, yeah, share some thoughts and let you people know, whether you're a man or a woman, that that amazing, beautiful, powerful Lilith, once you once you allow the power of her frequency into your experience and field of experience and trust it and really go with your instincts, because Lilith corresponds to really powerful instincts. Um, you may just find that you end up on a path that's just so much more suited for you, where you are so much more in alignment with your own path, where you are much more happier because you know that you're being true to yourself and you're not um, allowing the external sort of environment and so forth to mold you and control you and dictate to you what you should or should not be. So it's, look, it's not an easy path to take. And as I said, most people will not take it. Okay. That's just a fact. But for those of you that have been through some kind of experience of this kind of nature, um, who are going through it, then these are the things that you, I suppose, need to think about. And it's never easy, but is it rewarding? Yeah. Is it ultimately more fulfilling? Yeah, of course it is, because you're not denying yourself, right? You're not denying yourself of your true, authentic, um, wild feminine. And I mean, for me, that's really important. It really is important. It really speaks to my whole life, you know. Um, Many men and relationships that I've had, men that I've met, and so forth. Uh, it's, you know, I would perhaps be classed by many as the a woman who can't be tamed, can't be controlled, who's not a woman that is a, you know, a home mother, wife kind of woman, sort of thing. That's the perception that many will project on me, because I have the ability to be free without the fear of judgment. And that really speaks to my whole life, you know. And it's, you know, it hasn't been easy. Um, and there's been, you know, many times when I've felt very sort of excluded or isolated or alone, not lonely, but alone. Um, and I'm okay with that, you see, because I would much rather be with my own company than be within company that's not in alignment with me, you know, that's fake, in other words. Like, I would rather have one friend than a million friends, right, who are just fake. That's just who I am. That's how I'm built. That's just how I operate. And so for me to follow the path of the wild feminine, it was inevitable. That was always going to be the way. So, you know, I just want to kind of encourage and inspire those of you that are out there that may feel like this in some kind of way, you know, um, and to not worry, you know, to be okay with it, and to realize that, well, at least in from my perspective, I would rather be on my own than be in a situation where I'm pretending to be somebody that I'm not, or pretending to create a life that doesn't really reflect my soul, and doesn't really reflect the authentic part of who I actually am, and doesn't allow me to feel free. I would rather be on my own and embrace that journey on my own than be in a situation where I'm feeling secure because I'm in a marriage or a relationship or in a job or whatever it is, that brings that level of security at the cost of my own soul's freedom and my own authenticity. But hey, I'm a double Aquarius with Sun in Aries. So, I do have archetypes that can be like that and are more inclined to be like that. Um, there are, certain other archetypes, particularly earth and water signs that more earth that would not so easily embark on that journey because safety and security is more important. And hey, that's okay. That's not a judgment. That's just a fact relative to the earth, water, fire, and air signs. But I know that there are many of you out there who've got a strong Lilith. Some of you may be have strong fire, air signature, and some of you may have strong water and earth signature. And that's going to make a huge difference on how you embark that journey. So I'll leave it there. Okay. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye.